Let me tell you why we are Christians today. We are not Christians because Jesus came and died for us on the cross and died for our sins. No. We are Christians today because we were colonized by people who call themselves Christians.
People do not want human history to change. The timeline does need to fit a lot of religious narrative.
If only it weren't for those filthy goddamn Christians.
A lot of social narrative, and I think that it would be extreme.
Some people are really fucking stupid. Did you ever notice that?
We don't know how to talk about that. And the reason we don't know how to talk about this thing is because there's a foundation to our nation, to our history, that we've never discussed. In 1452, Pope Nicholas V wrote down these words: invade, search out, capture, vanquish, and subdue all Saracens and pagans whatsoever.
I don't see Christians moving into other countries around the world and committing violence. Committing violence that forces locals to cancel their traditions.
Reduce their persons to perpetual slavery. Convert them to his and their use and profit.
You're saying, I'm assuming, that history is being manipulated for an end
in itself.
These are the words in a papal bull written in 1452, and this papal bull, along with others between 1452 and 1493, collectively became known as what we call the doctrine of discovery. The doctrine of discovery is these series of papal bulls. It's essentially the church in Europe saying to the nations of Europe, wherever you go, whatever lands you find not ruled by Christian rulers, those people are less than human, and the land's yours for the taking.
Even the Bible does not allow colonialism to go beyond my generation.
The doctrine of discovery is these series of papal bulls. It's essentially the church in Europe saying to the nations of Europe, wherever you go, whatever lands you find not ruled by Christian rulers, those people are less than human, and the land's yours for the taking.
Inside Washington's Museum of the Bible, a single volume that is like no other. The so-called Slave Bible, remarkable not for what's in it, but for what's not.
So about 90% of the Old Testament's been removed. So about 90% of the Old Testament's been removed, and about 50% of the New Testament's been removed.
Good!
To put it another way, a normal King James Version has 1,189 chapters in it. The Slave Bible has only 232.
Good!
The doctrine of discovery is these series of papal bulls. It's essentially the church in Europe saying to the nations of Europe, wherever you go, whatever lands you find not ruled by Christian rulers, those people are less than human, and the land's yours for the taking.
You even said you discovered England. Tell people about
I discovered England when I was, the first time I went to England, I discovered it. I was in the middle of London walking around, doing like this, looking around, and the Bobby, that's the policeman, he came and he says, what you doing? I said, I'm discovering England.
This was the doctrine that allowed European nations to go into Africa, colonize the continent, and enslave the African people.
Missing are chapters and verses that might have encouraged uprisings. Book of Exodus redacted. No story of Moses demanding Pharaoh, let my people go.
This was the doctrine that allowed European nations to go into Africa, colonize the continent, and enslave the African people.
You know, when the colonizers first went to Ghana, they were flabbergasted to discover that every house, every home, had a toilet that was cleaned every day. Meanwhile, you still had your people defecating in public. Defecating in public, in collective cesspits that never got cleaned.
Wait a damn minute. Wait a damn...
Yes, you never cleaned them. You just buried it and dug a new one. See how you do? That's a habit with you. Just bury it and then start somewhere else.
This was the doctrine that allowed European nations to go into Africa, colonize the continent, and enslave the African people.
Hitler kills 2 million white people. He's the most evil man that ever lived. Leopold kills 20 million Africans. he still does not appear on the list of the most wicked people that ever lived on the earth. There must be something wrong with this narrative. Totally something wrong with that narrative. It can be right by day, by night, by numbers, by mathematics, by ethnography. It cannot be right that the whole world watches the massacre of black people and says nothing.
Gone is Galatians, and the verse, "There is neither bond nor free, for ye are all one in Christ Jesus."
This is also the doctrine that let Columbus, who was lost at sea, land in a new world already inhabited by millions and claim to have discovered it.
When I said I'm discovering England, he says, you must be daft. You know, that means crazy in English. And England have always been here. It says, well, I'm doing like Columbus. I just came here. I'm the first of my people to come, so I got to discover it. They discover everything that they came to.
Europeans come to this continent, literally ethnically cleanse the indigenous population out of existence, kill them on a scale that has hardly been equaled, and refer to them as savages. That's an achievement. Who's the savage? The first time I encountered this was in a little town in Massachusetts called Deerfield. It's a reconstruction of what that little town looked like in colonial America. And in front of each house is a plaque that explains something about this house. And then description. On the 18th of October of 1702, the savages attacked. The first time I saw this, the savages. You come in here, destroy everything these people have, and they are the savages. That's an interesting move.
It is.
You know?
I hadn't thought of that before.
Think about it.
That's got to be racist. There's no way. I'm going to just keep it real. There's no way that.
You cannot discover lands that are already inhabited.
Just bury it and then start somewhere else. That's basically the origin of America, if you think about it.
And know Jeremiah, woe unto him that useth his neighbor's service without wages.
Reduce their persons to perpetual slavery.
What they've left in are verses such as Ephesians 6:5, which is the famous verse, slaves, be obedient to your master.
Convert them to his and their use and profit.
Looking at this Bible, it's hard to tell that anything's been taken out of it.
That's correct. I mean, it looks like a normal book. For many enslaved Africans, this would have been the first time they were exposed to the Bible.
And you're saying, I'm assuming, that history is being manipulated for an end.
A Bible selectively edited to instill obedience.
In itself.
In itself.
History, the Europeans began to manipulate history when they rose and began to expand into the broader world in the 15th and the 16th century because they had to justify the slave trade and they had to justify the colonial system that followed.
Using religion to underpin the horror of slavery.
When people encounter this exhibit, what lasting impression do you want them to leave with?
But we want to pass the message on that may this never happen again.
Well, I did a post the other day, or yesterday, on X, where I said that Zionism is white supremacy with a yarmulke on, and that it's nothing but Yiddish for Western colonization. So, of course, I got a bunch of replies trying to correct me, saying that it isn't white supremacy, it's Jewish supremacy. See? This is them activating the built-in blame-shifting mechanism, which is the whole point. You're literally pointing to the yarmulke as the reason for all this, the reason for the occupation, the reason for the genocide. And I'm telling you that is exactly why they put the yarmulke on in the first place. But either you don't get it or you don't want to get it.
You cannot discover lands that are already inhabited.
You just moved away from the cesspit of Europe to start a new cesspit on the other side of the Atlantic. I'm telling you because you need to know. I'm not telling you to denigrate you. I mean, how are you going to be uplifted if you don't know how low you are now and how low you've always been?
Right? If you don't believe me, leave your laptops, your cell phones, your car keys in front of you, and I will come by and discover them for you.
The Bible itself is a whole book. It's not one that you get to carve up and use this piece or that piece.
The slave Bible designed to repress rebellion, but it didn't work.
That's stealing, right? That's conquering, that's conquest, that's colonizing. It's not discovery. The fact that to this day we celebrate that Columbus discovered America reveals the implicit racial bias of our nation. Natives are not fully human.
Enslaved people in the Caribbean constantly fought against slavery until emancipation.
This, of course, makes the doctrine of discovery a systemically racist doctrine.
And modern racism has its incubation in that period.
That assumes the dehumanization of people of color.
If we had to rewrite all of the religions in the world, and a lot of governments are still run by religion.
We have to understand that international law is not a panacea.
Enslaved people in the Caribbean constantly fought against slavery until emancipation.
You cannot enslave a man and say he's a human being, that he has humanity, and that he was one of the forerunners of the world's religion. You cannot enslave an African and say this about him, because if you say he's a human being, then you're saying he's an extension.
Enslaved people in the Caribbean constantly fought against slavery until emancipation.
I think it's very relevant to understand our history.
We have to understand that international law is not a panacea, and that it's a context that has a long, long history. And it's a history that is going back to the what's called the family of nations.
I think it's very relevant to understand our history.
And in the Webster's New International Dictionary from 1950, the following definition of family of nations was provided. The aggregate of states, originally the Christian nations of Europe.
I think it's very relevant to understand our history, not just American history, but our African American history.
Which as a result of their antecedents have inherited a common civilization and are at a similar level of moral and political opinion and have been recognized by those states as being on that level. And there was another edition which talked similarly, and is said to include the Christian states of Europe and their offshoots in America.
Any white person who was born, raised, and schooled in the United States of America, if you aren't a racist, you're a miracle.
And so forth and so on. Henry Wheaton, who was the Supreme Court reporter at the time that Johnson v. McIntosh was handed down, wrote a volume on international law called The Elements of International Law that was published in 1836.
Either that or you decided to educate yourself.
And in the advertising to the first edition, he was talking about the natural law, more properly called the law of God, and so forth. And then he said the old Christian states of Western Europe.
Because education in this country is about white is right, brown's all right, black's got to stand back. Yellow's milk.
The old Christian states of Western Europe were the original members of the family of nations.
But whites, we educate in a way that says that white males have done all the adventures, have made all the adventures, have done all the discovering, have made everything that is good and has been accomplished according to social studies, which is actually anti-social studies, by white males.
Because the law of nations grew up gradually between them through customs and treaties. Whenever afterwards a new Christian state made its appearance in Europe, it was received into the existing society by the old members of the family of nations.
I think it's very relevant to understand our history, not just American history, but our African American history, our roots and how we got to this point.
A dark chapter in the history of the good book.
My name is Anthony Schmidt, and I am Senior Curator at the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C. We are in our newest exhibit, or one of our newest exhibits, titled The Slave Bible. Titled The Slave Bible, Let the Story Be Told. The formal name is Parts of the Holy Bible Selected for Use among the Negro Slaves.
Acceptable to say the N-word and you're gonna be called out.
Among the Negro slaves in the British West India Islands.
The majority of our Pacific is black, and when we say we're proud to be Pacific, it's proud to be black.
It is for this reason that this law was in former times frequently called European Law of Nations.
Populations of Papua New Guinea, Vanuatu, New Caledonia, New Ireland, New Britain is massive. They're literally 80% of the Pacific. Polynesia is very small in terms of the number of Melanesians there are in our Pacific. And if you don't know your history, go look at a photo of the old Hawaiians, look at the photos of the old Samoans, look at the photos of the old Maori, they're black.
Selected for use among the Negro slaves in the British West India Islands.
Because education in this country is about white is right, brown's all right, black's got to stand back.
And it was published in 1807 in London by the London-based firm Law & Gilbert. Well, we think it was most likely produced by a missionary organization named the Society for the Conversion of Negro Slaves.
We have to understand that international law is not a panacea.
But whites, we educate in a way that says that white males have done all the adventures, have made all the adventures, have done all the discovering, have made all, everything that is good and has been accomplished according to social studies, which is actually anti-social studies, by white males. It's a lie. But we do that in order to maintain the myth of white superiority. The myth of race has to be maintained at all costs in this country.
The aggregate of states, originally the Christian nations of Europe,
how the fuck you know this? How? Hold on, bro.
Is said to include the Christian states of Europe and their offshoots in America.
And this was one of many missionary societies that popped up around 1800, dedicated to spreading Christianity around the globe. But mostly within the British colonies.
Hold on, bro. How?
There's a little clarification. Here it says, for example, the term Indian or Indio has been applied.
Understanding words is what you really need to start doing. You need to start doing your homework and understanding words.
The term Indian or Indio has been applied to many peoples, including Indians of South Asia, as well as other groups found in the West Indies, the Americas. That's curious. And the East Indies, Filipinos, Chinese, Japanese, etc. So it says down here, the term Negro
and you're gonna be called out. The majority of our Pacific is black.
Has been applied.
And if you don't know your history, go look at a photo of the old Hawaiians, look at the photos of the old Samoans, look at the photos of the old Maori. They're black.
The term Negro.
Our people are black. Get used to it. Being dark skinned is beautiful. It is not derogatory to me. And get with the times already.
Has been applied.
It's really important to appreciate the language that people use at the time. One of the things that I became very aware of is that even very good historians were not paying attention to the language.
The term Negro has been applied to black Africans, the Indians of India, Native Americans, Japanese, and slaves, about blacks rioting in British cities.
I'm saying, like, talk to me, bro. You the police?
So wait, they're calling all these people Negroes at one point in time.
Is you the FBI? CIA? What's you?
They're calling all these people Negroes at one point in time.
Within the British colonies in Africa, Asia, and of course the Caribbean. And so this book was produced by the Society for use by their missionaries who were going to islands such as Jamaica and Barbados to establish schools and churches.
Even the Bible does not allow colonialism to go beyond my generation. And I am here to make that declaration that the honeymoon of colonialism, with all its gadgets, governance, education, agriculture, entertainment, sports, recreation, health and technology, and spirituality.
So this book was produced by the Society for use by their missionaries who were going to islands such as Jamaica and Barbados to establish schools and churches, and with the intention of converting enslaved Africans.
The myth of race has to be maintained at all costs in this country.
There's a wonderful book on international law by Professor Anthony Angie, who is from the island country of Nauru, somewhere close, fairly close, I guess, to Australia, and the island country was devastated by phosphate mining by the Australian and UK governments. And he ended up getting his JD, I should say SJD, actually the highest form of law degree, from Harvard. And he wrote a terrific book on international law.
And so this book was part of a broader program
that's called Imperialism, Sovereignty, and the Making of International Law. And the foreword was written by a professor named James Crawford, who was a mentor to Professor Angie. And there is an acknowledgement in that foreword of the domination-subordination system.
And so this book was part of a broader program that they believed would improve the lives of enslaved Africans.
And Crawford wrote of the history of international law and how at different times or different epochs and in different ways, the legal history of the relations between the West and non-Western polities reproduced an underlying pattern of domination and subordination, unquote.
So this book was part of a broader program that they believed would improve the lives of enslaved Africans, both materially and spiritually.
Crawford says that Professor Angie's work illustrates, quote, the relations between civilizations and peoples. Moreover, these were relations of domination.
Many of the missionaries were actually abolitionists, and so they fought hard for the abolition of the Atlantic slave trade. However, they were more conservative in their views in their social views. So,
and Crawford placed italics on the word domination.
They might have thought slavery was wrong, but they also thought it would be a greater evil to simply emancipate enslaved Africans.
And Crawford placed italics on the word domination.
So they believed that in order to prepare enslaved Africans for liberation, that they needed to be educated and somehow morally uplifted through the church.
And I'm not knocking religion.
The church wrote the doctrine of discovery. They've been complicit in it for 500 years. I want the church to own it.
And so this book is aimed at justifying and reinforcing the slave system, but at the same time it was used to help teach Africans how to read, for example, and to somehow educate them in the classroom. We don't believe it was widely distributed. My theory is that it was they printed around 1,000 copies, something like that. The missionary organization wasn't very large. There were certainly much larger organizations at the time.
Include the Christian states of Europe and their offshoots in America, and so forth and so on.
They probably supported around a dozen missionaries at their peak, which was sometime in the 18-teens.
Whenever afterwards a new Christian state made its appearance in Europe, it was received into the existing society by the old members of the family of nations. It is for this reason that this law was in former times frequently called European law of nations.
When you think about it, the complexity of the colonial systems is actually insane. And these people made sure, like, the systems reinforce each other.
And I am here to make that declaration that the honeymoon of colonialism, with all its gadgets, governance, education, agriculture, entertainment, sports, recreation, health and technology, and spirituality.
They like back up each other. There's no way you're going to break out of this matrix. Poverty exists because of, let me name the simple three: religion. Religion makes the poor man understand or believe that he's deserving of what's happening to him. He can't kill the rich man, and his riches are not on earth, his riches are in heaven, even though God already gave them the riches on earth. Okay, sharp. Second is law. Law is morally influenced. religiously influenced, because a lot of things are wrong because they're wrong morally, therefore they are then like, you can't kill, you can't steal, you can't, some of them are morally influenced, you know, so they back up, law backs up religion or religion backs up law, whatever the case may be. You can't kill the rich man, you can't steal from the rich man, even though the rich man is using you to make his money. Imagine that. You can't kill, you can't steal, even though that's what happened. In order for us to be in this position, they killed and stole.
And so it continues to talk about the Christian states of Europe, is my point. And it was only after Turkey was admitted in 1856, and Turkey was an Islamic country.
I think it's very relevant to understand our history, not just American history, but our African American history.
Okay, sharp. The third one, education. Education is not the rich man versus the poor man. Education is just the poor man against themselves. All of y'all.
Yes, the poor were at once described as waste and inferior animal stocks in the colonial imagination.
If you are in the education system, you're poor. I'm sorry.
We prefer to believe all that has changed, but well into the 20th century, sterilization of the breeding poor struck many, even professionals, as a rational solution to an old problem.
I'm sorry to let you know this. You're poor. You're just the best slave.
And Turkey was an Islamic country, that it could no longer be talked about in exclusively Christian terms.
And so we don't think that it was widely distributed, which explains why there aren't many copies around.
Or you don't want anyone else to get it.
We don't think that it was widely distributed, which explains why there aren't many copies around.
And you're saying, I'm assuming, that history is being manipulated for an end.
In itself.
In itself.
History, the Europeans began to manipulate history when they rose and began to expand into the broader world in the 15th and the 16th century, because they had to justify the slave trade and they had to justify the colonial system that followed.
Which explains why there aren't many copies around today.
You know, you somehow want to exonerate the actual architects, the actual funders, promoters, arms providers, financiers, policymakers, and so on, who are in fact responsible.
There are only 3 that we know of in existence. One is at Fisk University in Nashville, Tennessee, which is on display here, and the other 2 are in the United Kingdom. Fisk was generously loaned us this item for our opening in November of 2017, and it's been on display on the impact floor,
Hey, colonizer.
which is the 2nd floor of the museum here since then. And it's gathered a lot of attention from our guests who have come through to see the exhibit or done tours.
Hey, colonizer. This video is going to make people mad from both sides of this discussion because it's the truth. But that's okay, because it's the truth.
We've received many questions from them and online as well. And so they've been very curious about it.
Fuck you!
To know more about its history and its story. And so through our research, we've uncovered a pretty remarkable story.
I'd like to introduce them so they can tell you about this extraordinary book. Go ahead.
Well, this book began not as a book, but began as a TV documentary. This is what we thought.
In 1929, they wrote the Motion Picture Production Code, a set of proposed moral guidelines for movies. It prohibited such things as nudity, indecent dancing, and ridiculing religion, while requiring the promotion of Roman Catholic values, where good triumphs over evil, and immoral behavior is punished. There were also slightly less folksy provisions, like barring romance between different races, as well as white slavery. Yikes.
And we thought that it deserved to be told in a wider space.
I may have uncovered a conspiracy.
A space that would allow for more of an interaction with the book, that provided a space for our guests to respond. And so with the support of Fisk University and our colleagues at the Center for African American Religious Life at the National Museum of African American History and Culture, we collaborated and opened this exhibit this past month. The space towards the end, after you come through and see the story, see the book, and then walk through the book in a sense by looking at this collage we have what was taken out, what verses were taken out, and what was left in.
So let's not displace colonial history too easily.
If they were stolen? No, they were not stolen. It was looting, yes, but there were looting of war was legal. I don't get this distinction between looting and stealing. No, it was stolen if you want, but in the 19th century, in the 18th century, in the 17th century, during all the wars, art was stolen. So we must get back everything or nothing.
The courage to say we were wrong. The courage to say about art acquired illicitly, this is not ours.
And more of this, these works of art, when they were taken, if they were not taken, they would have disappeared, because many of artifacts, African artifacts, are made of wood, and wood it was not made to be kept, you know, so it would have disappeared. They became works of art in museums because Europeans said it's art.
We have a space, a table, that asks 4 questions, and a guest can answer all of them or answer one. But they can receive a card, and they can reflect.
I want the church to acknowledge what it's done and to own the doctrine of discovery and their complicitness in it.
And put down with a pen their feelings and their thoughts on this particular story.
Now, as we began to investigate this, and we used all the kind of resources that investigators do, we look at every kind of book, every kind of official report, etc., diaries, letters, we realised it was an enormous story, and it was also something which refuted one of the great ideas, one of the key ideas of the development of slavery, which is that in 1619 slavery began in America with the arrival of 20 and odd Negroes, as they were called, sold, according to accounts, by a Dutch captain to planters in England, and this was where slavery began, when it wasn't true.
My boy right here, Otis, I'm selling him for 7 pennies.
Yeah, when it wasn't true.
Generations of myth makers.
And then they can hang that on the wall along with the answers that other guests have provided. And so we opened this space with the intention of allowing this type of reflection among the guests, and we've been really overwhelmed with the response we've received. Thousands of cards have been filled out, and they represent a wide range of opinions and emotions. And we've not only been happily surprised about the volume, but we've been very pleased with the type of reflection that guests have demonstrated in these cards. And what strikes me is the type of emotion that it's eliciting in the guests. So ranges from shock to sadness to anger, and so it covers a wide range of emotions too. We didn't have a lot to go on at the very beginning, and it was almost all the information we had was basically contained on the title page. We knew the long title, which was very detailed, and that helped. We knew the place of publication, London, and we knew the publishers. And so we also knew it was an abridged Bible. So right away we had a sense that it was probably a missionary book, because of the title states it's intended for those people in that region. So we began to just follow the clues. We looked into some missionary organizations that were active in the area during that time, but then we began looking into the publishers. And so we were able to track down other publications that they produced at this time, and lo and behold, they also produced or published the minutes of the annual meeting of the Society for the Conversion of Negro Slaves. And so we knew there was a link there somehow. So there's a history. There's a history between these two organizations. And so then we began researching that society, and we began uncovering some actual names of missionaries that were active in the region and what they were using, what they were requesting from the society. All of this stuff was printed in the minutes. And we began seeing the missionaries, when they provided the audits of what they received from in donations, we began uncovering titles such as select parts of the Holy Bible, 15, along with 3 school books or 3 arithmetic books and 5 candles and whatnot. And so now we're starting to sense that, yeah, I think we're getting very close. And we began reading more of the writings of the leaders of the society, principally a man by the name of Bilby Porteous, who was the Bishop of London and the founder of the society. And in a very famous letter in 1807, at the same time that the first slave Bible that we know of was published, he describes the tactics that he recommends the missionaries use in their interaction with the Africans in the Caribbean. And one of the tactics is provide a Bible that has selected parts that will teach enslaved Africans to be obedient to their masters. And so when we uncovered that, you know, this, with the publishers, their intentions, the way they used it, it all fit together.
And I'm not knocking religion.
Bitch, are you dumb? Pardon me? Are you dumb?
I think she's dumb. I think she's dumb.
I just think that it's
No, I think she's dumb. Are you, like, medically speaking?
I just think that it's restricting sometimes.
Are you like I'm not trying to be mean. Like, are you dumb? Are you? I think she's dumb. I think she's dumb.
And so when we uncovered that, you know, this, with the publishers, their intentions, the way they used it, it all fit together. And so that was pretty exciting. It's like finding a needle in a haystack.
It's time where the white Jesus must pack his bags and go back home.
Especially since we didn't have a lot to go on at the beginning.
What's that? Oh, hi, you're still here.
Lewis and Clark's 1804 Corps of Discovery was an early step in bringing that way of thinking to the American West.
Tribes are sovereign governments. The United States Constitution recognizes them as sovereign governments. But part of the doctrine of discovery claims the newly arrived United States or European country has an overriding sovereignty over the sovereignty of the indigenous groups, tribes, nations, call it what you will.
In time, that policy would take on a new name, Manifest Destiny.
As the pioneers came out west and were looking for more land, they believed it was manifest destiny, that it was their right under God.
If Jesus was here right now, would you let him in?
As long as he went through the proper, as long as
he came here legally. As long as Jesus Christ came to this country legally.
It's time.
The black conservative, your candidate says, I want to make America great again. You tell me when America was great, and then you tell me, would you go back to wherever it was great as a black American? And it's got to be before 2016, my friend, because that's when he was saying that.
I think America was great when everyone was benefiting from economic prosperity.
No, not general, sir. I'm asking for a specific time. When was America great?
If you want to know when America was great, ask any immigrant who was great. Ask any immigrant who risked their lives to come here.
Really want to hear from
America is great.
I really want to hear from the black man on this, because the second part of my question is, would you go back to that time? When was America great?
America was great when everyone had equality and everyone was moving towards equality. That's when America was great.
What year was
That's
that,
when America
sir?
was great. After the Civil Rights Movement, that's when America was great and making progress in change.
So let's say the late 1960s, you're saying as a black man, you would transport yourself back to the 1960s.
No, I think America was great when economically everyone was doing better. When we're making progress towards equality, that's when America was great. And
so the sum of the condition of America was when people had economic equality, and you think that was the 1960s.
I'm over here like, why do it smell pissy?
Being friendly and being a friend, I think, are two different things. I think there are many whites who act friendly toward Negroes. A fox acts friendly toward the lamb. And usually the fox is the one who ends up with the lamb chop on his plate. The wolf doesn't act friendly, and therefore the wolf has more difficulty in getting the lamb chop in his plate.
I'd like to point out, though, that...
And I say that because it is usually if you study the structure of the Negro community, economically, politically, civically, psychologically, and otherwise, it's controlled by the white liberal, who usually poses as the friend of the Negro, who actually differs from the white conservative in the same way that the fox differs from the wolf. Their appetite is the same. Their motives are the same. It's only their mannerisms and methods that differ.
These kids aren't stupid. They understand the name of the game. What we're not telling our kids are the nature of struggle and who the enemy is. Because the enemy will take my job, and I can't pay for my Lexus. I can't pay my house note. I can't send my kids to college. So I'm not getting up and talking about that.
So let's keep quiet, because the struggle...
And silence is consent.
Well, I don't make my work for you to interpret it. I make it for black young people.
But isn't there a danger in telling young people, encouraging them to be militant? Aren't you taking them down a track that can only lead to a cul-de-sac, and at the same time alienating a lot of people who really don't understand or accept or even grasp that militant language?
Well, what most people who know my work know is that I don't only teach young blacks to be militant, I teach them to be intelligent.
But we also have to realize that our history is complicated, and it has lots of things in it that we may be embarrassed by, we may find shameful, but to embrace it all and appreciate that tells us more about who we are today and the problems we have today, because it's not the old cliche that history repeats itself, but the past, the structure of our government, the nature of democratic practices, these things do shape what happened before, does shape what happens today.
The whole world belongs to black people.
Don't you believe that the black and white can live side by side in harmony?
If I said yes, that don't make it right.